Okay, hello. My name is Andrew Gamm. I'm just finishing my second year at Santa Monica College. I'm a mathematics major, and I'll be transferring to UCLA in the fall.
I'm Alessandra Khan. I am a freshman at UCLA, or I just finished my freshman year, and I'm a linguistics and anthropology major.
I'm going to briefly explain the premise of this interview. I'm going to be talking to her about her experiences being trans and, kind of how she has to navigate life or if it makes it any different for her. And we're also going to be, hopefully sharing how to spread awareness and inform other people about trans rights and what's kind of going on right now in the trans community under Trump's administration. So, all right, I'm going to start with this first question. Can you briefly summarize what transitioning has been like for you? Was it faced with initial support or did support build over time?
Yeah, so I think it's always something, or at least since I was been conscious, it's always something that I knew I was sort of going to do at some point, and that I wanted and needed to do. And I guess the main reason that I was so hesitant at first was because I was worried about other people's reactions, but that was mostly internalized. And when I did eventually come out at around 13, I was 13. I was met with, at least on the surface, it was all positive, it was all supportive. But I just couldn't shake the feeling that people felt weird about it because I felt weird about myself. So I was like, how could people not feel weird about this?
Yeah.
But in terms of my life offline, it's all been support. I mean, I've there have been some sort of subliminally mean comments, I'd say, but nothing that has endangered me, I'd say. Most of that hate has come online, and especially or indirectly, like seeing how other people have been faced with hate, not really directly towards me, because I have the privilege of not I don't present as super trans, if that makes sense.
So it sounds like you had a strong support system, which kind of encouraged you to come out. What would you say for people who don't have that support system and are kind of, hesitant on coming out? How would you say they should navigate their transition? Like, do you think they should look for support within themselves, or should they try and join communities of other trans people? Like, who should they look for the kind of support that you were, fortunate enough to have already from the start?
Well, I think since I haven't been in that position, it'd be difficult for me to give good advice. I would say I think I believe in, or I support the decisions of the people experiencing these situations, regardless of whether they choose to come out to their family or find a separate support system. I think there's validity in any route that uh, a trans person takes to, I guess, become their most authentic self. And yeah, I do think it's a really difficult. That's a really, really difficult situation, and I don't really think there is a right answer. I think it really is a case by case basis, and yeah, I just think we should support how trans people decide to go about transitioning.
And that's what we hope to have with this interview. Okay, so the next question I have is, what compelled you to write your op-ed in the Daily Bruin? And after writing it, were you afraid of any criticism you may have received for writing it?
So within the first few days, maybe even the week of Trump being president, and the barrage of executive orders that completely violate people's civil rights, but that's neither here nor there, I guess. The UCLA administration, their emails to the Bruin community had been so vague and almost not even naming explicitly what is happening or whose rights are being violated. Sort of just trying to be as generalized and safe in their language as possible. And it didn't have the effect that I think they were aiming to have, which was to try and minimize uh, the offense that people would take. Like, obviously, there are going to be people who disagree with what they say. I think it was cowardly, and I think it was confusing, especially for trans people, because we're seeing these executive orders that explicitly aim to attack our rights and subject us to lives that are extremely dangerous. And for that to not even be named by the UCLA administration, and for them not to explicitly, I guess, come forward and talk about what they can do, what they're still working on, what they don't know, and sort of lean into that uncertainty. I thought it was shameful, and problems were coming up left and right, and it just wasn't being addressed. And so I felt like, okay, I guess I have to be the person to say something.
That's good, and that kind of leads us to this question about being supported by educational institutions like your school, and it could be through, it doesn't be the institution as a whole. It could be like, have the teachers and professors been showing you the support that you feel you need as, a trans person? Have you been receiving that from your teachers or like your peers, or has it been something that you feel could be shown more, or made more direct and clear to any trans students at UCLA?
From teachers and from faculty and all that, the ones who I have disclosed my identity to have been nothing but supportive. I'd say it gets a little wary when I start talking about peers, because I guess my close friends have been super supportive. I mean, there have been some instances where like they might have said something that maybe they shouldn't have said, but it came from a place of ignorance, not of hate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Classmates, I once did a project where I asked for my classmates' perspectives on trans people, and it was anonymous, and I received some very hateful responses to that. But those people aren't really my friends. But yeah, I would say it has been a mixed bag.
Yeah, so that kind of leads me to this question. Seems like what you're more hesitant about in talking to, your peers about it is, you're afraid of how they're gonna
Hmm.
perceive you, obviously knowing that you're trans now. So what are some common misconceptions that people have about trans women that you wish more people understood, or kind of realize that are those are just like stereotypes, like not all trans people are like this? What are some of those misconceptions?
Well, I think one of the big ones that I don't even really want to pay any attention to or like validate by, I guess, countering it at all would be like that trans women are predatory or something like that. I don't even want to give that one any attention. One that I think is treated as a little bit more valid or justifiably controversial is the question of whether trans women should be in sports. And not that I play sports, that's not my life at all. But it does really upset me because we sort of we treat sex as this like all just to attack trans women. We treat sex as this the pinnacle of like biological advantage, as if someone being 7 feet tall isn't far more of an advantage than whatever set of chromosomes I have when you put me under a microscope. Like, I just think it's so ridiculous. It it really is just a way to attack trans people, and the fact that people struggle so much with this question, even the ones that are so accepting, really just says something about how we view trans people in society, and I guess the hostility that we hold for them, even internally.
And do you think there's like a lack of media that is kind of going against those misconceptions, or do you think it's more media is perpetrating those things and continuously saying, "Oh, trans women shouldn't belong in sports"? Like, do you think it's more negative or positive in media what people are saying about trans women?
I think that's a really difficult question because in our day and age, we really only see what we want to see because the algorithms are pushing to us what we already agree with, or what at least what it knows we'll keep our eyes on. Um, from what I've seen, it really I couldn't even assign like a percentage to either direction. I think oftentimes it's so difficult to even determine for yourself whether something is transphobic or not. Oftentimes I struggle with that too because it is so like prevalent in our society that yeah, it's difficult to pinpoint. But for example, like even people that I would consider to be friendly towards the trans community, like political leaders like Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom, have said things that really are just not supportive and undermine the rights that we're trying to gain. Um, like Kamala Harris, for instance, in an interview, was so hesitant to say that she supported trans people's right. She said, "I support what the medical professionals say." Like, okay, we understand what that means, but why are you so afraid to say it? Is it
Right.
really just about political points? No, people's lives are at stake.
Exactly. Um, and okay, the next question I want to ask you is: have you faced any challenges accessing healthcare or gender affirming care?
If you had asked me this question 3 days ago, I would have said no. But the only surgery that I have ever sought out just 2 days ago, and by the way, I had been pursuing this surgery for years. I first got my like letters from psychological professionals saying that I was like sane and able to consent to something like this when I was 16, and I'm 19 now. I've spent thousands of dollars and dozens of hours of my time pursuing this, getting, I guess, like preparatory procedures and stuff, not to go into detail. But um, the other day, 10 days before my surgery was supposed to take place, I got a call from my surgeon saying that since because of the okay, so I don't want to ramble too much, but this is
Yeah.
at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and it heavily relies on federal funding. So the threats of the Trump administration, I guess they take it a little more seriously. But they decided to shut down their trans youth clinic just like in July. They decided to shut it down for July. And they also decided that any bottom surgeries that were going to take place before that time were no longer allowed to take place, which was that was a decision that was the board's decision, totally arbitrary, and I will be seeking legal action. But my surgeon called me 10 days before the surgery was supposed to take place and told me that she was no longer allowed to uh, perform it. And she said that I'm still in very much like a mystery period right now, but tomorrow, a colleague of hers who works in San Francisco is supposed to call me and talk about whether he's able to, I guess, pick up that responsibility and conduct my surgery sometime this summer. But it is so time sensitive. Like I have to go back to school, you know. So yeah, this just completely interrupted the course of my life, I guess.
So does like the kind of abrupt shift that the children's hospital kind of showed you recently, does that kind of like make you fearful of like other sort of public institutions that are backed by federal funding? Because the intimidation from the Trump administration and how easily it was for the children's hospital to you know close down
Mm-hmm.
their trans care center. Does that kind of like make you fearful of how schools or like other public institutions may respond to Trump threats or Trump's administration in response to trans people?
Yeah, I think just to start, it's really affected how I'm planning to go about like pursuing this surgery in the future. Like for example, I'm weary of pursuing it with a new surgeon who I don't know because I mean like this is there's a lot of risks to this and it's a really sensitive situation, and so I would rather it be with someone that I know as well as I knew my past surgeon. But I'm watching as all these institutions are being like turned against me sort of, and I'm that has to factor into my decision like whether I'm ever going to be able to get this at all. And that to connect that to your question, yeah, it really does feel like the world is closing in on me a little bit, especially hearing how politicians are just trying to appease appease the people who are attacking me by I guess using like vague language or just trying to take on a middle ground position that I think is so dangerous because as as we descend further into fascism, that middle ground just gets less and less reasonable and more hostile.
Yeah. And so to try and sort of combat that sort of closing in on you and other trans people, what do you suggest or recommend, communities do and people do in general to kind of help prevent that from happening? Like obviously it's a very complicated question and like
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect you to like have like, oh, here's this, the blank blank blank. Like just overall like it could be just doing what's already being done at like a more concentrated, rate, but just in general, like what do you think would help sort of combat that from happening? Is it protests? Like what do you think
Mm-hmm.
would work best?
Well, okay, so I want to start off by saying that this is not the only community that is being attacked right now. It's basically everyone who has ever faced any sort of marginalization in the US is now under threat. And so I understand that this sort of has taken a back seat a little bit, and sort of is in the shadow of other issues going on. But that's not to say that we shouldn't be talking about it, and I really think we are ignoring this problem and people are really focusing on other, rightfully so, on other problems. But this, I really wish that this were part of the conversation more, because the less we talk about it, the less we know what's happening and the more normalized the attacks on my community will become. I mean, I think normalization is so dangerous in this situation, if that makes sense.
No, I get what
So
you're
we just
saying.
can't
Yeah.
let it be normal.
Yeah, yeah. So you're not saying it's should be at like the forefront of, every other problem happening, but
Mm-hmm.
you do think it should still be involved
Yeah,
more than
I
it is
really
right
don't think it's
now.
talked about enough.
Okay, I see. And I guess sort of like last question that I would want to ask is what message do you want to give to people who are uninformed or hostile towards trans rights? Like what do you want to convince them, to think about trans people?
I think just that like we're people and we're just trying to live and we're not trying to bother anyone else and we're just trying to be ourselves, and it's not about deceiving anyone. It's more about being authentic with our own relationship to ourselves, and just to, I guess, give us grace. You don't have to understand us to be okay with the fact that we exist, and we've always existed, and we always will exist. Whether you shove us into a corner and I guess close your eyes to what we're telling you, we will always be here.
Okay. Thank you. That was, I think, went very well. So, yeah.